It's pretty much his hangman.
What did they say?
Hangman.
Amen. Funny.
So the bureaucratic framework that most organizations are built on, mine is too. I've chosen, for reasons I'll tell you later, I've chosen not to try to redo this, but in a formal way. This structure, this bureaucratic structure, that is the way most organizations is organized, really comes out of the old paradigm of Darwinism of survival of the fittest. And the whole theory behind this, and it's changing, but the whole theory behind this was there's a few people in an organization that know. And it's our job, because the people in this part of the organization don't know. And it's our job to define the work sufficiently so those that don't know can produce what we know needs to be done. And that's typically how we've organized this. So these meetings up here are highly strategic. These meetings here or here are to tell you how to do the work. For us to maybe share ideas about how to get the work done according to the specifications that are coming from here. Some of that's done in factories and other places like that in a very formal way. Specs are written. In other places it's less specific in that kind of way. That's what's going on. Interestingly, in this framework, the purpose or mission of the organization is largely held here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. But the assumption is that the purpose or mission of the organization cannot be held by people lower in the organization. Problem is that each of us as human beings have our own P, our own sense of purpose. And I don't care who you are. Folks, I worked on ore carriers on the Great Lakes during the summers with people who were largely trying to be recovering alcoholics who couldn't make it on land. And the safest place for them to be was out on the lakes. And as I got to know them, their sense of who they were as a human being, their sense of purpose was quite evident if you paid attention. Don't ever let anyone ever let you believe that every human being either understands what their purpose is or is trying to figure it out. Well, the best of all worlds is when the purpose of the organization and my sense of personal purpose align. That doesn't always happen. And so it might not always be the receptionist's job, may not, but it might be, may not always be the way I'm going to get my personal purpose met. I may get it met some other way in the community. One of the things we do, we pay attention, we talk about people's personal purpose a lot. So that even if it's not being fulfilled in our workplace, we can understand your sense of purpose enough to celebrate it. Because it's worth being celebrated, even though it's not being necessarily completely fulfilling the workplace. But if this is the way we think of the world, then this organizational P and the personal P oftentimes don't get a chance to line up. What's interesting is this is man-made, but it's not what's really going on. What's really going on in organizations is this. What's really going on is a network. This is the way living, if you could look at through a microscope at a leaf, if you look at anything in nature, this is how it's organized. Cells are connected together to create tissues. Tissues are connected together to create organs. Organs are hooked together to become human beings. It's the way it is. It's natural. It's what you're working in. And just because I have the title of CEO, in the reality of network, not in that which we've made, but in the reality of network, I have a particular role to play in the network. But it's really not that I hold some greater sense of knowing. In fact, in our organization, this trauma system stuff, it is so complicated. I have no clue. They know what's going on. I have to be there to support them. If I pretended as though I knew how to deal with disaster planning and trauma systems, yeah. So I have a role. And everybody else has a role. In truth, when we recognize this is the way things are working, purpose can be held by everybody. The big P purpose can be held by everybody. The CEO or the head needs to be willing to understand that, in fact, if they let go of purpose, other people are completely capable, and not only capable, but want to hold the purpose of the organization. Because we all have this going on. And most of us, I was saying this morning, 99% of people that come to work do not come to work to fuck things up. We don't. We don't, at the end of the day, want to walk out of work and say, my day was useless. Because if I do that, then my sense of my own personal purpose is trash. I either take my purpose someplace else, or I go and drink. Or both. Or both.
Or drink wine regularly. He's dead.
So it's interesting, isn't it? That this is the way almost everything's organized. And this is what's really going on. All the time. It's kind of fascinating to me because the places that have figured this out and have understood that this is just man-made are the military, the police, the emergency squads, and that sort of thing. They understand this for real. The ER understands this for real. But what do they do? What does the military do? What do the police do? They drill. They drill, they drill, they drill, they drill, because they know that's what's really going on. And I have to drill because I need to not have you doing that when there's a fire or somebody's bleeding out. But the only way this works is if you drill, because that's the natural way things are working. Interestingly, the police, I was doing this one day, and the guy from the fire department was there, and I started to talk about this. He goes, wait a minute. I said, just let me finish. The fire department and the police department has actually figured this out too. Because, and I'm from the United States, we've learned the hard way that a private out in the field in Afghanistan who shoots a whole village up creates an international incident that the President of the United States has to answer to. I can create an international incident that the President of the United States has to answer to. And so, the United States military, and that's what I'm familiar with, they do these after action circles. So after things have taken place, they actually will pull their chairs around together like this by the side of the tank and process out what just happened in this battle together. And so when I said the fire chief, well, I'm glad you said that, because we drill, but when we, after the fire, this is what we do. Because we know this is what's really going on. Even though we've drilled ourselves, because at the moment, if I say move the hose, move the hose. I don't need to second guess anything. But at the end, we know this is what really happened, so we sit down and process it together. So, what that's meant in our organization, and this part of the reason that Tim asked me to come is to tell you some of this stuff. What we have done is, if I tried to change this to look like this, I've been there 15 years, I'd be lucky at 15 years of I have 4 different boards of trustees, if they would even, at this point, ever understand it. I've been spending 14 years trying to help them understand the new structure. It was easier to leave that the way it was and to incorporate some new practices into our organization. So, for instance, I said earlier, my leadership team, there's 6 of us. We've been meeting in a circle like this, 6 of us, every Thursday morning. In fact, I just saw text going back and forth because we have a rule if 2 people are missing, the circle doesn't happen. Whether it's going to happen tomorrow morning or not, I'm going, and somebody else is going, it's not going to happen. We've been meeting in that little circle for 12 years, every Thursday morning. Well, these companies, these 4 companies have changed and morphed over the 15 years in dramatic ways. They're not what they were before. But guess what the constant is? Thursday morning. What you can count on is Thursday morning. So we're practicing this because a circle of us in conversation together is more aligned with this than that. We bring the whole organization together once a month to practice this as a whole. About 6 months ago, there was some discord happening in the organization, and it was coming out of our admin staff, our secretarial staff. There's a lot of stuff going on, backbiting, and we got into our leadership team we call the kitchen cabinet. We got into the kitchen cabinet meeting. What's going on? We got people that are pissed at each other, and there's emails going back and forth, and then we got into it because we each kind of feel like we have some ownership of those relationships with those administrative assistants. We started to get into it. Well, she said, and why did you let? And we got into this heated argument. And just like the example I gave earlier of when we moved into the building, everybody was kind of like, okay, we got to figure this out. We can't let this thing continue. We got to figure it out. We got to figure it out. And I said, let's talk about it. And then no, we're not going to figure it out. I would like it to sit for a week. Because people were like, they need to be fired, they need to be reprimanded, they need to be. And I said, we sat with it for a week. After a week, we came back together and said, what's wise? What's the wisest thing? And what people said was, what we know in our organization is the practice of circle works. We didn't have a circle of the administration, of the admin staff. We had this circle, which was leadership team. We had the whole, but we didn't have a circle of administrative staff. The organization was leaking. So the wisdom was, don't fire anybody. Let's start an administrative staff circle. So we have, guess what? It's all gone. All the shit's gone. Because in that circle, you meet in circle for 12 years, and mom is sick, or my kid is really sick, you can't hide. And it's okay to take care of somebody in the circle because their kid is really sick. Now I'm a human being and I'm getting work done. Because if I'm aware that your kid is sick and I'm worried with you or I'm concerned with you, this is a good place. I can work. I might be scared and I might be worried, but other people around are going to support me.
couple of minutes, Phil, tops. There's something here what you're saying, which is like this. What Phil's talking about is that it's like when your rhetoric and your action actually meet. How many organisations have like a rhetoric of like we're all going to work together and there's going to be really good relationships and we're all going to like have these values of like trust and honesty and but they actually have no structures built into their organisations that actually enable that to be the way we get things done. All the structures are about making sure that we deliver on results and deal with the urgency, right? So what you're pointing to is like, if like this cannot just be rhetoric. If you want it to be more than just a 2.5-day meeting, it has to be structures that get put in place that enable people to sustain relationship so they can get good results. And there's a direct correlation.
People who've been pissed enough at each other that getting together on Thursday morning is not what they would want to do, but it's not an option. There's not many rules in our organization, but one is you show up for circle. And you show up pissed. And let's deal with it. 12 years. You know what happens when you've been in a circle with people for 12 years? You fall in love with them. And I think one of the biggest fears in organizations not adopting practices that allow us to get close is our fear that we really will be close. And that's scary because we're going to get brokenhearted too. Somebody's going to leave. Somebody's going to die. I remember when, a few years ago, a person in our kitchen cabinet circle left to become the Assistant Commissioner of Health for the City of Columbus. I really, like I do with everybody in that circle, I really love that woman. And I remember the night she left. I was helping carry her books out to her car, putting her books in her car, stuff as she was leaving. And I remember driving home that night, and I cried all the way home. And that was the day I realized that if you practice being in real relationship with people, you will be brokenhearted. I would rather live that way and be in a real relationship with people and risk being brokenhearted than to be numb, which is typically how we live and work in organizations, is numb. And you don't have to. But you got to put in the work. Because this is what's really happening. Our receptionist has as much power as I do. And if you think that's a joke, she has as much power as I do. She guards what comes into that organization and what goes out of that organization. And if I think anything else,